Advanced portfolio. In what way does your media product use, develop, or challenge forms and conventions of real media products? Narrative structure. The narrative structure of our film can be analyzed by using Todoro's equilibrium model, where we have an equilibrium, disruption, and a new equilibrium. For our film, the equilibrium was the twins being at an orphanage, knowing that they will be adopted by a family. But more importantly, the audience hasn't seen the other side of the twins, and therefore the disruption occurs when the twins act nasty towards their stepsister. The new equilibrium is right at the end when they burn their stepsister alive, and like suggested in the beginning, this isn't the first time they've committed such a crime, and maybe this cycle will continue. The binary opposition within the narrative would be the fact adopting orphans is generally seen as a good action in society, and also that twins are seen as innocent people, maybe because of the sympathy we have for them since they are unique. The film is in chronological order, and the main reason is because the effect which is created in non-chronological order is inappropriate, and we know this due to the research of other similar genre films. The ending of the film is more open rather than closed, because we end with the fire, and what could happen afterwards partly depends on the audience's imagination. In this way, the film has its own mystery. Finally, the narrative structure of the film is restricted because although it is hinted at the beginning that they have been problematic in the past, we do not know in what way. The story unfolds before us, and we are shocked by their brutal attack. Genre codes and conventions. The characters in the film are generally typical for a horror thriller movie. The use of strong language for the villains and the innocent tone for victim is typical. Also, the confidence of the villain is reflected within the body language and facial expressions. This was the same with the similar film I have analyzed, where they had no feelings, and throughout the film they didn't, until one of them did, and this created them to separate. This highlights the main feature of villains, and that is they don't have feelings. However, our twins don't separate, they act as one throughout. The victim has a frightened and helpless body language. This again is very typical for nearly all of the horror movies. In the film Seconds Apart, which I have watched and analysed for textual analysis, the characters had a very unusual style of language. Even though it wasn't typical, for example, strong language and shouting, it gave a sense of mystery to the villains. Therefore, I have tried to apply the same to my characters in the beginning, and later on to add more dramatic twists to the change of events. The character's style of language became more aggressive. However, the character's costumes and other features such as makeup and hairstyle is kept as typical for the age of the characters. However, the storyline is very typical compared with the films of the same genre. We introduced to the victims first in an unusual way. In this case, the costumes, the location, and the atmosphere within the location created with the lighting and the lack of props. Later, the victim and the villains meet. However, the villains hide their aggressive identity when other characters are nearby. But once the villain and the victim is left alone, we start to see the real faces, which are typical features and have been used in the film Seconds Apart, which I have researched on. And not long after the victim gets attacked and killed by the villain in their own unique style, in this case, burning her alive. Film language. Cinematography. Using close-up of character's face to clearly reflect the fear or anger of the character, or to have a close-up of props like candle which reflect danger. Close-ups in horror movies and the film I have analysed is used very often, because it is very important in order to pass on strong emotions to the audience. Medium shots is to express the body language of the characters. For example, the villain have a very calm body language, and the victim being in panic. Long shots are used to show locations and points of view to create a sense of physically being there, and also to create a tension in our case when the twins approach the victim to attack. Sound. Music which is in harmony with fear and music that builds up tension is a big part in constructing the language of the film. Building up tension using music when appropriate and the stages where the conflict starts is typical. For example, the film used for my contextual analysis also contains music which helped highlight the mood of the sense and in a way guide the audience in what they should be experiencing. Editing. Fast-paced editing during action and slower pace at parts which need emphasis on the tension is used. Also fade transition used in order to show the time passed and cutting out the sound of some scene in order to highlight the music and effectively create a mood. Mise en scène. Using objects like fire, matches and rope is typical objects used in horror movies. Also, the use of typical family home is used to represent the innocence of the adopting family, and many horror films are set in normal houses because it is more shocking when the horror erupts. Facial expressions and body language used to construct an understanding of the twins as evil and the stepsisters as innocent.